Good morning. Ah, nice to see you. I went to the art shanties and kite festival, which was occurring on Lake Harriet, which is named the Day Unma by the Dakota people. And yesterday, and it was bitterly cold. It was kind of cold, but when we got on the lake, the wind came up very, very strongly, and there was particles of ice blowing in my face. And I was like, what was I thinking? And there were thousands of people playing around. They were like kids, like they would run. There's the ice, the snow is very thin on the ice. So they could just run and land on their bellies and slide across the ice. I saw people doing it on Gandavyuha earlier in the morning during a priest meeting, which was very distracting. Sorry. 10. I just felt so much tenderness for people. I love animals, plants, I love the sky. I'm a little bit limited. I have a kind of a particularity with people. I love them. They are amazing. And all their joy and playfulness in what might be considered quite terrible conditions was inspiring. And if you were sitting on a couch covered in a blanket all day complaining, that's okay too. That's okay too. That's a place for tenderness as well. So today I'm going to talk about the 4 divine abodes, sometimes known as the 4 immeasurables, or the 4 Brahma Viharas, or the 4 heavenly minds. This is a very basic Buddhist teaching that some people here may have spent a great deal of time with. So it's kind of a perennial. So these 4 are loving kindness, metta, compassion, karuna, altruistic joy, or sympathetic joy, mudita, and equanimity, upeksha. So, loving kindness is basically a feeling of care and wanting well-being for people and things. Compassion or karuna is basically the capacity to feel or make space for the suffering that is here. Sympathetic joy is the ability to feel joyful when people have joyful things happening, like when kids go sliding across the ice and you go, oh, mudita, as opposed to like, get off of my lawn. It's not mudita. Upeksha, equanimity, even-mindedness, non-reactivity, peacefulness. So the basic idea is that these are valuable, beneficial, and can be cultivated. An interesting thing about emotions is that you can cultivate beneficial emotional states, and also you kind of can't control your emotions at all, in my experience. I can tell you, if I could control my emotions, my life would be so different. And one of the most difficult things that brought me to practice was just the overwhelming torrents of difficult emotions I would experience. And even with a great deal of practice, when they're there, sometimes it's like, yeah, I'm just going to be here. I'm going to be here as long as I'm going to be here. And yet, we can cultivate other kinds of emotions. So we cannot control, but we can practice. I think that's what it seems like. So metta, loving kindness, many people are familiar with this basic practice for developing metta or loving kindness, which is to think about particular people or groups of people and then say loving phrases towards them in your mind. May you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be safe, may you be at peace. So this is a way of cultivating a quality of mind, which is one that wishes well-being for others. And this is so basic to what Buddhism is about. The first noble truth is that there's suffering. The point is that we should care about it. We should care about it. And karuna, compassion. So I gave a whole talk recently just about compassion, in which I made put quite a bit of emphasis on sort of looking at different aspects of compassion. So compassion is like being able to be with the suffering that's here. So metta has this outward sort of warmth and outgoing quality, and karuna or compassion is more like a spacious quality. But it runs it's contrary to the tendency to want to ignore, deny, or separate ourselves from suffering. But in the previous talk, I'll just remind you or bring this up because it's kind of important. Karuna, like if we get close to suffering, there's a difference between being able to be with suffering completely and being with suffering completely and then feeling all the suffering yourself. So that'd be like the distinction between if you are with someone who is dying, say, and maybe you're able to really be with them, but seeing their process of death causes you to be so overwhelmed by your own feelings that it's actually hard. Suddenly, if you really look, you realize, oh, I'm not actually with them that much. I'm actually with all the stuff I have coming up. So that's empathy. When we directly feel, it's like, oh, now it suddenly has become my feeling. What happened there? So it's like a resonance. It's like if you take an A pitch tuning fork and hold up another one, you can stop this one and this one will still be ringing. So this is probably, I think it's a necessary part of developing compassion. It's the ability to have empathy, but it has some limitations because, of course, if you really open yourself up to all the suffering in the world and you're a tuning fork, you're going to shatter. There's a lot. There's a lot. And mudita, sympathetic joy. Yeah, this is nice. Yeah, that's fun. You can actively be like, oh, when someone tells me about something wonderful, it's my obligation as a Buddhist to enjoy it and feel good about it. It's nice. Let it in. Let it in. And of course, this is quite contrary to, for example, envy. It would be kind of like an opposite phenomenon. And, holding all these things in relationship, I just was reflecting on, I'm really lucky. I get to go to a lot of meetings. I don't actually go to that many, but I'm a part of numerous groups focused on social and racial and climate justice, and then I serve this community, so we have meetings here, and I serve on some boards and stuff, board and all kinds of stuff. But meetings, And I'm lucky because, you know, at the meetings I go to, there is a tendency to focus on mutual care in the process. Tendency. So, you know, often we have little check-ins. And I can tell you, just in the last week, how many times I've gone around and everyone says something about what's going on, and at least one person has something that would be from a conventional understanding, like really terrible. And they're experiencing really difficult emotions. And they're like, this is really hard. You know, someone has just died, or I have a really difficult health condition, or I'm just overwhelmed by the cruelty and oppression that's being actively articulated by the US federal government. You know, these kind of, oh, really intense. And then the next person is like, oh, I'm doing really well. And, you know, something wonderful just happened. And I got to hang out with my kids all weekend. It was just beautiful. And everyone gets to just be how they are. And when someone is joyful, we can all say, oh, well, let the joy in. When someone is sad, we can, you know, to be like, okay, we have to stop everything. Get to be with a lot of people who believe it's okay for us each to be how we are and to bear witness to each other in that. And this is this is a natural, can be a natural outgrowth of your Zazen practice. Because just as when we sit in that circle and each voice comes, I don't know about you, my mind is like a lot of voices. Who are you even? You know, telling me this story right now. What is this feeling? And it makes me like, oh, something joyful. Oh, well, let's be joyful. Oh, something really sad. I can be close to that sadness. The teaching on no self sounds very philosophical, but the basic idea is there's just something happening. Is something happening right now? I think so. What is it? I don't know. Are all the contents of it what they would conventionally be understood to be self or other, all of them worthy of compassion? I think so. Wouldn't it be beautiful to be able to let in the joy and let it flow? To care about whatever it is with metta? I think so. So this brings us to upeksha, equanimity. It's just space for everything to happen. So when we're caught up in our own material of our cognition, of our thinking, overwhelmed by emotions, this can happen. It's okay. But with upeksha, non-reactivity, what's the normal translation? Equanimity. Equanimity, non-reaction, peacefulness. There's a stability and a spaciousness to our awareness in which all of these things can move and be seen. So upeksha is very close to compassion. In a certain sense, you could say compassion will need to start with a lot of empathetic engagement, but at some point it can open, so it's just space. So a moment is always a space in which any suffering that arises can be fully seen. Without adding anything. Now that's really something. I usually like to add a little something. What do the kids say these days? You're a little bit extra. Katagiri Roshi would always say, nothing extra. And then Tomoe, when you were sewing, would say, you always need to leave a little extra. A little extra fabric, so you have something to fudge when you get in trouble. So these are things that we can cultivate and develop through practice. I mean, we have the basic, very common metaphor is plant seeds and they bear fruit. You know, if you would like to live in a world where there's lots of love and compassion and joyfulness, then it would be good to just, you know, give it a try. See, how can you evoke these qualities? And I think, you know, I've heard a lot of people lately there's a lot of things to be concerned about, but a lot of people have top of mind. They're talking about what's happening with the US government. And you know, there's a lot of ways you can think about it. But I will say from a Buddhist perspective, there's not much in Buddhism about democracy. Forms of government other than people getting together and caring for each other are not a major subject of interest. They're mostly dealing with a time where there are a bunch of kings. So what kings should do is explained in detail, but I really hope we don't get there. But what we do hear a lot about is love and compassion. And I do think when I listen to people, when we had a council process here about a few council processes here related to US politics, at the bottom, people see that there's cruelty, there's violence, there's oppression, there's alienation being created. People are actively trying to separate different groups of people and pit them against each other. And this is something Buddhism has a lot to say about. And the thing is, we can't control it. Like, I'm pretty sure if anyone in this room would be like, we're just not going to have any more of this like cruelty and misogyny and all this relentless attacking of immigrants. It's like pointless cruelty towards transgender people. That you just do it. You get your wand out and be like, yeah, we can't do that. But we can practice love. We can practice compassion. One way to practice compassion is like listening. It's pretty hard for me to understand the experience of being a person of color or an immigrant, because I was born in the United States and my parent, like, I don't even know what generation of my parents immigrated to the United States or my family. And I'm white, so yeah, but I just heard a friend of mine was like, a longtime old friend who's, you know, got skin tone darker than mine. I didn't even know she was Latina. But she was like, yeah, 30 years ago, I went to the US border to go to Mexico. And they pulled us out of the car. We didn't have, there was nothing about us as suspicious except for that I had brown skin. They searched the car for 3 hours. They held us there. They were really mean about it. And they couldn't find anything remotely problematic. And then we went to Mexico and had a vacation. This is, and they felt violated, they felt sad. Oh, so I just listened to that story about the relationship of this country that I'm a part of and in which I'm a citizen, where I have agency and the experience of people who are different than me. Oh, let it in, let it in. A space, compassion can happen, can feel some loving kindness and a wish for things to be better for people. Try and find some equanimity, so I'm not just sitting around stewing in my own complaints. Because then there's energy. Turns out that these things all have an energy that can move us to do things. You're going to do things either way. Are you going to not do any? Is anyone not going to do anything? Too late. You just did something. Too late. Did it again. You're doing something always. That's called karma. It means action. It means you're doing something. It means the way your consciousness is working right now and what you're doing with your body affects the universe. You are planting seeds. Let's go. It's on. So this teaching of the four immeasurables is it is pre-Buddhist. So it was incorporated into Buddhism from earlier teachings from India, which is actually not the norm. There's a lot of innovation in Buddhist teachings from the overall cultural and spiritual social contexts. But this one is one that was quite clearly taken up. They're explicit about it. And actually, now I'm going to get in trouble. The Digha Nikaya, which is the long discourses, is one of the sections where they're most likely to try and make distinctions between Buddhism and other Buddhist traditions. So I'm just going to read you this. You get to hear a little sutra. The practice of cultivation of the four divine abodes is conducive not to turning away, nor to dispassion, nor quiet, nor to cessation, nor to direct knowledge, nor to enlightenment, nor nirvana, but only to rebirth in the world of Brahma. That means heaven. So all this is going to get you is going to heaven. So it's pretty limited. My practice, this is the Buddha speaking, is conducive to complete turning away, dispassion, cessation, quieting, direct knowledge, awakening, and nirvana. This path is the Eightfold Path. So these teachings are explicitly and over and over and over again throughout Buddhist tradition celebrated and emphasized, but they're understood to have some limitations. And I don't want to dwell on that, but I just like to bring it up. I will say Zazen is intended to not be a practice with limitations. It is actively not limiting anything because you're not doing anything or making anything happen. You just sit down. I know, like, I would like to do something, but what if you just open to everything? Upeksha, equanimity, compassion. It's already space. It's already space. All the suffering is already here in the space. You can't make that happen and you can't make it not happen. Zazen is to sit and realize what's already here, which is that you are intimately, all of us, connected to everything, everywhere, forever. So the practice period coming up, I'm going to be leading practice period this spring at MZMC. And the study material is going to be from what's called the Gandavyuha, which is the last chapter of the Flower Garland Sutra. And I'm not going to talk much about it, but it's really wonderful. I'm very excited. I have a book coming out about this material in the fall as well. And this is a copy of the book, but you probably won't get this. This book is 450 pages, and it's the last chapter of the Avatamsaka Sutra. It's quite a tome. Anyway, the Gandavyuha is the story of a pilgrimage of a young seeker who meets many, many very diverse teachers with an extremely diverse array of practices. And in the, in it says this. So I'm going to read this whole thing. I was supposed to do this first. He's talking about the universe. And he says, this is the abode of those who dwell in love, but have no emotional attachment. Those who dwell in compassion, but show no hesitation. Those who dwell in joy, but are always grieving because they watch all who are suffering. Those who dwell in equanimity while working for others. This is also the quotation on the bulletin, although I slightly edited it. So I arrived at this Dharma talk. I was like, I got to give a Dharma talk. It's like Thursday, and I'm like, I got to give a Dharma talk. So what am I going to do? And something all different ideas. But I tried something I'd never done before. I just said, well, we talk about the Gandavyuha during practice period. So what I'll do is I'll just go to my research notes because I have this whole book about it. So I have like vast troves of material. And I just scrolled through. I have like 30 pages about 10 pages of notes on the Gandavyuha. It just says a line from the text or a page, and then it says some cool thing in there. So I just opened it up and scrolled, and it said page 332, 4 immeasurables, and their near enemies. And I opened it up and I said, good. I'll put that down. I've never done this before. This is not like some faith in divination. I'm not saying like, I think Tim may have moved here because he opened up a map and just put his finger on Minnesota. I believe he's told me that story. I think it's a public story. So, okay, there are many ways. Anyway, the reason I say this is the section in which these lines I'm going to talk about for a few minutes occur is one, it's like 20, it's about 3 pages of talking about all the amazing things that are in the universe that we live in. And it's all the amazing things in terms of all the beautiful practices people do. It talks about them doing the jhanas and the mindfulness and doing compassion in all these different ways and being wise in incredible ways and understanding emptiness in like 37 different ways and on and on and on. And then just in the middle, there's this little thing that's very beautiful. So this is a very expansive piece of text. And it's just like, it's almost like if you walked into a room and it was like the entire floor was strewn with rubies. And you'd be like, God, it's kind of overwhelming. And then if you sit down and you pick one up, you go, wow. That's what we're doing here. Anyway, so this quotation again. This realm where people live, the realm of interdependence, is what he's realized. Sutana at this point has realized interdependence. And so he realizes this is how the universe works. Everything is completely interdependent. So this is the realm of those who dwell in love but have no emotional attachment, those who dwell in compassion but show no hesitation, those who dwell in joy but are always grieving because they watch all who suffer, and those who dwell in equanimity while working for others. And this is just, so there's often an idea in Buddhism that a quality will have like a near enemy, which is something that's kind of like it, but is not so good. So the very conventional, with love, the very conventional one is, the near enemy of love is attachment. And this is one of the reasons the Buddha says loving kindness practice is limited, because if you spend enough time being like, I want you to be happy, healthy, safe, and protected, you're going to be really dissatisfied. Because it doesn't happen. Everyone dies. People are harmed. There's pain, there's suffering. So we want to be able to care about them, but it can be completely overwhelming and we can get trapped. So we need these other elements of the practice to balance out that love. But love without attachment. Oh, that's pretty good. I don't know. I should plan these things better. I was thinking, like, my dad he was like, I gotta get, he was in the military and then an academic career. He's like, I gotta get everything with an institution that will support me, where I'm safe, where everything will be cool. He's like square as a bear. And then his sons were just like maniacs. I mean, I didn't even want to get into it. And even when I got sober, it was like, I've been self-employed for 30 years, I was a musician. That's a good idea. During the last year of his life, I was working as a bicycle messenger and working as a musician. And he just loved me and supported me. He just loved me and supported me. I suspect somewhere in there he's like, God damn it, what But it's possible to just love and care about people and let them experience what they experience. So I found this one interesting. In the text, it says they dwell in compassion without hesitation. And the very conventional near enemy of compassion is, I really don't like the term, but they'll call it idiot compassion. But really what this means is becoming overwhelmed with your own emotions, so you're paralyzed when you become intimate with other people's suffering. And if that happens, you're not an idiot, because I don't like it. You care. And if that happens, then you can be aware that they're suffering that's now yours. And you can be compassionate there. Because there's no self, it's just stuff that's happening. All matters. But here it says they have compassion without hesitation. And we need this. it is time for people to move, to energize and say, I care about people. I see their suffering. I'm going to look for ways to do things that will help them. We need solidarity across difference. We need mutual care. We need mutual support. I know it is hard to figure out what to do. Yesterday, or just the other day, I was like going through, I'm on signal groups and all these listservs for different activist groups. And I'm like, all these meetings, what meeting should I go to? What meeting should I invite other people to? Yeah. So I don't want to be paralyzed. I don't want to hesitate. I just took the action of trying to discern which ones. So, compassion without hesitation, because it can be kind of overwhelming and paralyzing. So if that starts to happen, what can you do to make the shift? Just be like, okay, I need to put some of this down, direct some energy. Joy while still grieving. That's interesting because usually the near enemy of joy is just attachment. Because, you know, as someone said during a check-in recently, I fell into a deep pit after the election, and then of darkness. And they said, my main problem is I prefer the light. But here, this joy, dwelling in joy while still grieving, really has a particularly Mahayana flavor, more than the other normal understanding of a near enemy, because the idea is that we don't have to oscillate between joyfulness and sadness. It is actually possible to be utterly joyful while directly, compassionately present and caring about people. So this is about non-duality. It's about non-duality. It's about realizing, what do they say? We contain multitudes. This is possible. It's possible. I've seen it. Yeah. Maybe, what's this moment? Just recalling being at meetings for recovery from addiction, and so much joy, so much anguish, no separation. And lastly, it says they dwell in equanimity while working for others. Yeah, you know, sometimes people say like, oh, I don't want to get into it. I have to be upset to be motivated. Well, if that's the only way you're going to get motivated, that may be okay. But it's possibly to be motivated by compassion that is just space. That's a much more sustainable energy. It's an energy that doesn't pile your business onto other people's. And of course, it does end by working for others, with others, because we're non-dual. But this is a Mahayana place of practice. This is a Mahayana text. This is about liberation of everyone. So I'm just going to read you a little thing from the Pali Canon about the four immeasurables. One suffuses the world in four directions with a mind of loving kindness, then above, below, and all around. The whole world from all sides completely, with a benevolent, all-embracing, great, boundless, peaceful, and friendly mind. Just as a powerful conch blower, a conch like a horn trumpet, makes himself heard with no great effort in all four directions, so too there is no limit to the unfolding of this heart-liberating benevolence. This is a way to communion with Brahma. So in the language of the Pali Canon, usually when you're developing the four immeasurables, what you want to do is you send them out or recognize them as being present immeasurably in all directions. So I would like to just do a brief meditation for evoking the four immeasurables. So if you would like to adjust your posture, you can. And these kinds of visualization meditations usually done with the eyes closed, as opposed to zazen, which is done with the eyes open. So zazen is just radical engagement with everything right now. But here, just noticing the breath in the body. And I'm going to invite you to invoke some feelings. And if you don't feel anything, that's okay. Just kind of stay with it. But that's part of the process. It's okay. I'm just going to invite you to use your own imagination and just try and think of something that helps you feel a sense of kind of warmth and outgoing, loving kindness. So wishing well. Very likely just thinking about someone that you love and care about. Just trying to evoke the feeling itself by thinking about the person or the situation or the thing. It may be subtle or it may be indetectable. It's okay. And if you could touch some kind of feeling of this loving, caring, wishing well, if you can imagine it as a warmth, like an actual tactile heat. Not excessive, just warm and comforting. And just imagine this radiating outward in all directions. Okay, now I'm going to invite you to think of something that evokes a feeling of compassion. So just think of some person or group of people or some kind of suffering. Try and focus more on space where the suffering can appear and having it evoke a feeling in you. Quality of bearing witness. Now see if you can be aware of space extending in all directions in which suffering can be seen, can be known. Now let's see if we can evoke some joy. So think about something joyful or happy or wonderful that you have, perhaps someone you know has experienced or told you about. Just seeing someone being joyful. Let this feeling arise. Maybe picture this joyful feeling as a light, kind of a radiant light that is now pervading in all directions. Now I'm just going to invite you to recall the sense of warmth pervading all of the space in all directions, the space itself where suffering can be seen, light suffusing all of this space. And then just picture yourself like a tree. Not even in the center of space. Just a tree in a vast space where suffering can all be seen, pervaded by the warmth of loving kindness and the radiant light of joy. Let's just let all this imagining go. Just notice the breath and the body right here. And I'll offer a bow. Thank you for your meditation practice. Hanging out here in the forest. Why are people so different than trees? Not so different. Some weird little thing that's kind of emerged within a big process in a little ball. Very nice. I'm just going to read you a couple more short things from this Gandavyuha. This is where Sudana has encountered Maitreya, this whole section I'm reading from at the end. The 51st teacher he meets is Maitreya Buddha, the Buddha of loving kindness, or Maitri. This says, we can develop energy by seeing this present life as a cause of old age, sickness, death, and grief. Simply an abode of assemblage and disintegration. And yet, the basis and condition of carrying out the practice of bodhisattvas forever. We can develop energy by seeing this present life as a cause of old age, sickness, death, and grief, a place of coming together and falling apart, and yet the basis and condition of carrying out the practice of bodhisattvas forever. I've been teaching a class on the Four Noble Truths, and the basic message of that teaching is we can turn seeing suffering into energy for liberation. That's the idea. We can just turn it, we can transmute it. How are we going to care about liberation if you don't care? I have to hear about people who are suffering to want to care for them. I have to see my own anguish to be like, oh my God. Makes me think of this guy I used to know who during a recovery meeting once said, I have no idea what's happening. There are all these feelings. Suppressing. It doesn't work. It's a little bit hard when you let them move, but wow, then energy for liberation. Then, towards the end, Maitreya is addressing Sudana, the little pilgrim. And I think when one reads this, the context is so overwhelming, everything ends up being directed to you. Maitreya says, welcome, child of compassion and love, universally kind, welcome one of tranquil eyes, do not flag in practice. Welcome, pure of heart and tireless in mind, welcome, buoyant in the senses, do not flag in practice. Having set out to contemplate all truths, guide all beings, and follow all spiritual benefactors, you are welcome with your unshakable, steadfast resolve. You might think, well, that's nice for Sudana, but I'm not sure how unshakable I am, or maybe I don't have that much resolve, or, I'm not really that kind. Guess what? Buddha nature, my people. You are inalienably connected to Buddha. It's not somewhere else, and it never can be. All right, thank you. I got kind of excited and talked a lot. So we just have a few minutes, but I welcome questions, or it's nice. Questions are good. It's nice to keep them brief. And if you speak, I'm coming over here. Please speak in a full voice, whether you're online or in person, because there's lots of people who want to connect. Vanessa.
I have a question about that.
Could you hold on? We have someone in the room.
Person can go.
Go ahead, please. You. I will come.
And that separation between you see suffering and it's okay to be about it. And you were talking about just it's okay to put it away, channel the energy kind of another way. How you can help us a little bit to, at least me, to that disconnection, because even in the meditation, where you go to a place where you imagine something suffering or a group of people suffering, I go there and then I get very, very sad. I get so connected with the suffering. I get immersed in that suffering in a way that it's hard for me to pull out. How can you dig a little bit more on how to channel that energy?
Yeah, that's like a really, I think it's a very core part of our practice. So it's like a big ongoing question, but a couple of things just practically. One, once you realize that you have a lot of the suffering, then you can make that the object of your compassion. So you go, oh, there's sadness here. Oh, and so it's like you've shifted and realized that there's something even closer. And so that's one thing you can do. Another thing is, if in the bigger picture, if you start to get overwhelmed, you can just shift your attention. So you may need to be like, yeah, I need to not read the news today, right? So that's, or I need to say, no, I can't come over to your house to a friend who's like really suffering and kind of piling it on you. So we can have boundaries. And actually the practice of shifting from the apparent object to what we think of as ourselves is also a boundary practice, because you're saying that's a thing and this is a thing. Where am I directing my attention? And then it's kind of like a be patient. Yeah, because these seeds of being able to have really spacious awareness, they seem to take quite a bit of time. But you probably have other good ideas too, but I'm gonna ask someone else here. Thank you. Okay, is it Jody? I can't see
Josh.
the Josh, thank you.
Hi. You kind of touched on something that I've heard in in a lot of areas, including Buddhism, but like not, but like just kind of like this idea that like heaven and hell are kind of like the same place, but like look through like a different lens, I guess. It's all kind of about like, your perception, I guess. So I guess like I'm wondering like, is that like, that hell side, I guess. Is that something like we have to allow ourselves to fear, or is that kind of more of like the aim of like we're trying to like get away from that? We're trying to like, allow ourselves to like be in heaven.
Yeah,
Maybe a deep
yeah.
question.
So actually, these are called the divine abodes and the heavenly minds. Basically, it is a pretty basic idea in Buddhism that like the kind of your perception of the world is going to have a really big influence on what it's like for you. And there may be people in hell in this room right now, and there may be people in heaven, and there's probably a lot of us in between. But it is good to sort of what would probably be good to do, let's see, put this practically, want everyone to be well, to experience love and kindness and compassion and safety. So to have that heavenly experience for everyone, that's really the aspiration we want to be aiming towards. But realize that we can't get there by pushing away or ignoring hell. And in fact, we may, if we really care enough, we may have to go towards people who are in sort of what we think of as hellish places and be with them and care about them so that we can get there together as a mutual project. Thank you. Probably just time for one more, please.
There's a lot of words in Buddhism, a lot of text and all that stuff. If I were to boil it down to this compassion without hesitation thing, would that be cool?
Compassion without hesitation. Yeah, compassion without hesitation, that's pretty good. The only problem is the words do help because, we'll kind of get a little bit confused about what compassion really is. It's actually has subtle gradations. So yes, and I do think the words have value beyond giving us something to do on Sunday. But actually, giving us something to do on Sunday is important.
No, the football's done.
You just said now the football's done. Yes. How do we come together? How do we come together? Many ways, but it's important. No one left out. No one left out. Compassion is boundless as space. Kindness is boundless as space. Joyfulness radiating in all directions. It may seem distant or it may seem close. It may seem impossible or it may seem possible. But it's worth cultivating all of it for everyone. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to the Doan for announcements.